Wait, why did they change their name to Vice? Like, what? Because, it used to be called Voice of Montreal, but why Vice? Like, why not just any other name? That's what I'm kind of confused about. They decided, oh, just remove the L from Voice and just call it Vice. Like, where did they got the idea from? Like, that's something I'm still confused about. Huh, even MTV was on board. That's wild. Because, this is like around the late 2000s. Like, they couldn't really be that edgy, but I guess they managed to work with Vice and they managed to, like, compromise, I guess. I don't know. But, it's kind of crazy to think about now. So yeah, with that out of the way, let's watch what happened to Vice. From $5.7 billion to bankruptcy.
Once multi-billion-dollar company,
Vice Media was once one of the hottest names in new media.
Everybody's looking at us because we're hot and we're new media. We're new media, not old. And we have the demo that everybody wants, which is millennials. And
Oh man, I don't know. It's just everything about Vice. It's just ironic because look, there's already a video on Andrew Tate from Vice themselves, but still, you can kind of tell that hey, they're a relic from the past. They can't really. I mean, they tried to adapt to the present, but clearly it failed miserably.
we're just trying to do what we're trying to do.
Just a few years ago, they had a multi-billion-dollar valuation.
You're close to generating $1 billion in revenue?
Okay, there we go.
That's the plan, yeah.
Within the next, what?
12 to 18 months.
They really did push the boundaries. They were sort of fearless in their reporting. It brought this whole new way of approaching a subject and really challenge what we do.
So why are they not successful?
If you were tuned to pop culture in the 2010s,
Oh my God, Flappy Bird. Before it got deleted because the creator just couldn't handle the hype. That's something I'm still questioning to this day. Like, why couldn't he like handle the hype? Like he was making a crap ton of money, like, from ads in particular, and so many people were making videos about it. That's what drove the attention to the game. Like, why did he just delete it all? Like, what? I don't know. I just don't get it. Like, why was the hype too much for him? Like, he was like being talked to. There was like so much media attention to him. So it's like, what happened? I mean, we might watch a video about that eventually. But anyways, let's get back into Vice.
then you know it was impossible to escape Vice. No, we don't mean drinking, drugs, and partying, though that's going to come up later in this video. Don't worry. We mean Vice, the Canadian-American media company that's been at the forefront of entertainment and journalism for years. This company was behind such iconic documentaries like Fire, the Greatest Party That Never Happened, which exposed the infamous Fire Festival, and Make the World Greta Again, which followed climate activist Greta Thunberg.
We have come here to let you know that change is coming.
Jesus Christ. Not gonna lie, and this is gonna be like a hot take and piss everyone off, but I think Greta Thunberg is overrated. I mean, that's just the facts. Like, the reason why they just gave her attention is because, well, she's a child. Like, I don't know. It's like, there's like nothing important about her. Like, she's only just a child, and people just, trying to like, boost her up, and I don't know. I just think she's overrated, and I just feel like those who believe in her are just stupid.
Whether you like it or not.
Being at the cutting edge of journalism, Vice Media was a hot corporate property. In the same decade, Vice saw hundreds of millions of dollars in investment from 21st Century Fox, TPG Capital, and A&E Networks. Now, just a few years after these decade-defining creative wins and financial backing, Vice has filed for bankruptcy.
Vice Media has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The news coming early Monday morning and represents the latest defeat for the digital media space.
This comes months after the company canceled several projects already in development and laid off staff. So, what went wrong? How could a company that was valued at $5.7 billion a few years ago be going bankrupt?
Oh, well, as far as I know, they just waste a lot of that money and, just on stuff that just weren't that great. And they also started making things that were just not really what, the fans wanted. Like, obviously the fans wanted like some on the ground, coverage on some wars that were not being covered by any other, media company. Like, I think they talked about some sort of like Turkish like civil war or like some riots that happened before. And Tim Pool was there. I kind of watched it and I thought it was impressive. I mean, not 10 years ago because I watched it like a few weeks ago because Jesus Christ, I was like a little kid when that happened. But yeah, that's what Vice was a lot. That's what they're mostly known for, like doing things that obviously like normal media would not do. And obviously once they started getting deals with like HBO and then investment money from Fox, Disney and these other companies, it just started to just drift away from what the fans knew them as, the thing that they started following. and like they started doing like these progressive things. I mean, they were like a mixture of like conservative and progressives, like anyway. So it's like it's whatever, but it's like they alienated like half of the audience, and the new audience they just became more and more extreme, and Vice just cannot keep up with their demands, and just cannot stand out with their beliefs. And at the same time, they just the investors also at the same time they kept demanding more and more returns because they obviously needed to make back all that hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in investment that Vice just cannot recoup. So yeah, that's what drove them to bankruptcy, and I'm surprised they're still around now, like a year later after they filed for bankruptcy. Like they're just trying their best to just climb back up again, but it's like I don't know if they can really do that. And like I feel like it's like too late for them now. Like they're just something from the past and something that just tragically just got murdered by groups of people that just didn't like what Vice was doing, and that's what caused the old fans to just leave them, and that's when Vice just died. In a lot of people's eyes, including me.
And is there any hope of Vice recovering from this setback? Stick around and we'll dive right in. Before we can get into Vice's fall, we want to take you through its rise. More specifically, we'd like to get into how the media empire we knew as Vice came to be. Fun fact, did you know that Vice wasn't always called Vice? All the way back in 1994, three Canadians, Shane Smith, Tarush Alvey, and Gavin McInnes.
Oh, Gavin McInnes is hated by everyone now. Like, if I remember correctly, like he was the founder of the Proud Boys, which is like basically Antifa, but like the opposite of it. And obviously, there's like a clash between the two occasionally. And at the same time, he's like responsible for like Censored.tv, I think, and he has like his own show under that platform. And obviously, he just says some wild things, so it's like, of course, people are gonna hate on him. Like that's just the truth. Hold on, just gotta check something real quick. Okay, yeah, my mic is working. I just have to make sure. Yeah, I don't know why. My phone kind of died before I went live, so it's like now to like do everything manually instead of like because I use my phone as like a stream deck because I don't have one because Streamlabs has like an app where you can do that on your phone, but I don't know. My phone's taking forever to charge and it died, so I have to do everything manually now because I don't have because here's the thing, I only have like one monitor. I'm not like like those streamers that have like two or three monitors with them. No, I only have one. So we gotta do what we gotta do.
Got funding from the Canadian government to launch a magazine called Voice of Montreal. The idea for this magazine was that it would cover the edgier topics that mainstream publications wouldn't want to touch. Honestly, that sounds on brand with what Vice does even today. Well, this little magazine was a hit, and within 2 years, it had changed its name to Vice and got $4 million in funding to move operations away from the Great North to New York City.
Wait, why did they change their name to Vice? Like, what? Because it used to be called Voice of Montreal, but why Vice? Like, why not just any other name? That's what I'm kind of confused about. They decided, oh, just remove the O from Voice and just call it Vice. Like, where did they got the idea from? Like, that's something I'm still confused about.
Things really started to pick up, and soon, international editions of Vice sprung up in regions like the UK. The thing to note about Vice is that it stayed true to its edgy roots and tackled topics other publications wouldn't. No one was quite doing it like them. By the turn of the century, Vice began turning its attention to other forms of media. Its formula had worked with print, but what about TV and online? The world was about to find out. The 2000s will be remembered as a time when video ruled everything. MTV dominated the airways. The world developed a taste for reality TV, and more than ever, consumers wanted to watch their content and not just read it. Vice saw the shift, and in 2006 began working on establishing digital video mediums for itself. To do this, Vice teamed up with one of the biggest forces in pop culture, MTV. Together, they launched VBS.TV, an online TV network. VBS.TV quickly gained a following for its original documentaries like The Vice Guide to Travel and Epically Latered, which were about, you guessed it, edgy topics other mainstream platforms weren't covering.
Huh, even MTV was on board. That's wild. Because, this is like around the late 2000s. Like, they couldn't really be that edgy, but I guess they managed to work with Vice and they managed to like compromise, I guess. I don't know. But it's kind of crazy to think about now. I mean, yeah, it's normal now because we have social media and anyone can say anything, especially on Twitter. Because if you say anything on anything else, you get banned. But yeah, that's kind of crazy how they decided to work with Vice, MTV. Not saying like it's a bad thing, but it's like, man, they decided, you know what? Let's see how this goes. Since they're doing something that obviously no one else is doing, and that their audience is like, like millennials. So it's like, you know what? Let's see what the millennials are up to. Like, why are they liking Vice? And obviously they found out.
Think documentaries about drug use in Colombia, the suicide forest in Japan, and the dictatorship in North Korea.
We just got back from North Korea, and all I can say is, holy fuck.
After getting its foot in the digital video sector, Vice's management decided that it was time to branch out to create more specific platforms for its different areas of interest. It was during this time that many of the Vice-owned media brands that we've all heard of came to be. Think of Vice News, which was all about current events, Motherboard, which was all about tech, and Noisy, which focused on music.
Of course, it's gonna be called noisy because, well, I don't know. I think it's obviously like there, like why they called it noisy. But I thought they're just like Vice News, but and there's also like Sports and Vice Food, I believe. I don't know. Like they decided to like, expand and do other things because they can't just use Vice for everything. So like it kind of makes sense. You have to like branch out and use like different brands. But I didn't hear about like Motherboard or Noisy. All you know about like Vice Sports or Vice News, like all that stuff. Like everyone knows about those things, especially Vice News. Like come on, like obviously if you know about Vice, you know about Vice News. That's like one of the things that's like their bread and butter.
While Vice stayed true to its more experimental roots, these different factions allowed the company to find more mainstream audiences. If you didn't want to watch documentaries about the local underground music scene, you could always watch and read Vice content about tech or news. It was the best of many worlds. As the 2000s rolled to an end, Vice saw some changes in leadership, with McInnes leaving the company, but it also had ambitious plans to do even more. After all, this once grassroots publication had gotten to a very comfortable place in the media world. Imagine what could happen with more funding. There's no need to imagine, because in the years that followed, Vice scored some very powerful allies and launched projects that would solidify its place.
Yeah, look, Vice Sports right here. This is what. Well, I mean, it's not Vice News, but it's like one of the also main things about Vice, like the sports, obviously. Oh, is that what the name is for the food? Munchies? Well, that's close. There's no way they're gonna call it like Vice Food. That's kind of stupid, but Munchies is close enough to what I was thinking.
On the world stage. The 2010s saw Vice change up its business model a little bit. VBS.TV, the online TV network that had become a major part of its operations, was shut down.
Damn, I guess the whole friendship between MTV and Vice didn't last too long, or I guess they decided to just mutually just agree to just move on. That's odd.
Instead, Vice's documentaries were aired on its YouTube channel and website.
Never mind. I guess it did work out pretty well. Like why they decided to shut it down because well, Vice in the end grew with YouTube. Because Vice is like one of those, or it used to be like one of those like big channels back in the day in the 2010s. Like it helped carry YouTube. Because my God, like I said, like the Vice in the 2010s on YouTube was crazy.
And boy, were these some interesting documentaries.
Yeah.
We'll get to that later. Not only was Vice distributing its content in a new format, but it also had new funding. From who, you may ask? First, there was 21st Century Fox, which bought a 5% stake in Vice for a whopping $70 million in 2013. The next year, A&E Networks, which is owned by Disney and the Hearst Corporation, spent $250 million on a 10% stake in Vice. In 2017, TPG Capital invested $450 million in Vice Media, most of which was to go towards its expansion. This also brought the valuation of the company to a mind-boggling $5.7 billion.
By 2015, man, it's just wild. They were just doing magazines, articles on their websites, YouTube videos, documentaries. My God.
Needless to say, Vice Media had a lot of money to spend, and it certainly did.
Oh, that's definitely true. Documentaries were, I mean, they still are like a big thing. So it's like, of course, Vice, since they were already kings of, making videos on YouTube and, like doing like articles, magazines, and I mean, for some of the YouTube videos, they did some documentaries, but they decided, let's just, turn it up a notch and do like, those types of documentaries now you see like on Netflix, HBO. I mean, I bet they do documentaries for those platforms anyway. So, it's kind of interesting. they went from making like YouTube documentaries and those kind of low budgeted but like still interesting documentaries to like big budgeted documentaries that you see like probably something like I don't know like maybe like Tiger King. That's like obviously that's like obviously one of the big documentaries, especially on Netflix. So it's like maybe they're going up to that level of making documentaries. Vice, especially in the mid 2010s. When they started like amping up their production when it comes to like I don't know bigger budgeted stuff.
If there's one thing that Vice is known for, it's documentaries. Given
Yep.
that it got its start covering some of the less mainstream topics in society back when it was a magazine, it comes as no surprise. And during its heyday in the 2000s and 2010s, this was translated to its video efforts as well. But things were a bit different because Vice was able to reach a wider audience thanks to its YouTube channels and partnerships with major streaming networks. Remember when we said that Vice was making some very edgy documentaries? These were a mix of the seedy underworld that Vice had been covering for decades, as well as topics with more mainstream appeal. Take Fire, the greatest party that never happened, a documentary produced by Vice that aired on Netflix in 2019.
There's this new festival coming up. It's really exclusive.
The most insane festival the world has ever seen.
Biggest event in a decade, I promise you. I'll be there.
But we didn't know anything.
Glamorous, luxurious, Caribbean.
Island getaway turned disaster.
Quickly spiraling into chaos. Now the event's co-founder is facing up to 20 years in prison.
Most of us know the story. The Fire Festival was supposed to be the hottest music festival in the world, and Billy McFarland, the man behind it, had commissioned some of the biggest stars on the planet to promote it. Fire Festival ended up being a dumpster fire of an event that captured the public.
Wait, hold on. I do not recognize any of these names. I don't know what they're saying about like biggest names. Like I don't know. These are like nobodies to me. Absolute nobodies. Like these are not big names at all. I don't know what they're talking about.
To promote it. Fire Festival ended up being a dumpster fire of an event that captured the public's fascination, which led to the Vice-fronted documentary. It was a smashing success, getting positive reviews, becoming a hit with over 20 million viewers in the first month, and scoring 4 nominations at the 71st Primetime Creative Arts Emmy Awards. There were other creative successes, like Hate Thy Neighbor, which followed the lives of several controversial groups around the world, and Make the World Greta Again, which followed climate activist Greta Thunberg just as she was rising to global recognition. These were not just creative wins, though. Vice's coverage of such topics that were hot within the cultural zeitgeist meant that the company was more relevant than ever. But did this make Vice's content more profitable? Hollywood seemed to think so, and soon came the deals with several streaming giants that would put Vice's content in front of even more eyeballs.
Huh, I guess they did have a deal with HBO and Netflix, or separate deals.
By the 2010s, it was clear that Vice was making content that people, especially millennials, wanted to see. It wasn't long before Vice was inking deals with streaming services for all sorts of docuseries. We've already touched on Fire, which, fun fact, was pitched to Vice by Jerry Media, the social media agency that helped promote the ill-fated Fire Festival in the first place.
I guess he decided to throw those who created Fire under the bus.
Well, you can't say they weren't pragmatic. But besides Fire Festival, Network acquired several documentaries from the staple of Vice Media. There was Jim and Andy, The Great Beyond, about Jim Carrey's portrayal of comedian Andy Kaufman in the 1999 film Man on the Moon.
That's the moment when Andy came back to make his movie.
Hello.
What happened after was out of my control.
There was also The Most Unknown, the company's first full-length documentary to be acquired by the streaming service. And Netflix wasn't the only streaming service getting in on the action. In 2015, Vice and HBO announced a deal that would see the launch of a daily Vice newscast.
Vice News Tonight.
Vice would also get its own...
They had like their own show or channel on HBO. That's neat.
Dedicated channel on HBO's Now streaming service. In the announcement, it was clear that Vice's cutting-edge approach was exactly what HBO execs wanted. All of us at HBO couldn't be more excited working with the Vice team and helping to tell the stories which define our world. Shane and the Vice team have produced some of the most groundbreaking and dynamic journalism anywhere, said HBO's CEO Richard Plepler at the time. The Vice streaming service partnerships were going so well that in 2020, Vice Media signed a deal with the top Hollywood Hollywood talent agency WME. The agency would be representing Vice in seeking out deals for unscripted projects. It seemed that the sky was the limit for Vice, with Viceland coming soon after. While VBS.TV had been shut down in the early 2010s, that was not the last we'd see of Vice's original TV programming. In 2015, the company rolled out Viceland, its own TV channel. Vice had already proven that its content could be a hit with audiences a la HBO, and so Viceland was given a big push. The Walt Disney Corporation pumped an impressive $200 million into Vice to support the project, and 30 shows were developed solely for Viceland. And what were these shows like? Well, given that this was a Vice project, you weren't going to get your run-of-the-mill cooking shows and daytime soaps. Instead, viewers were treated to more lifestyle content that stayed true to Vice's usual style. Rapper Action Bronson presented a cooking show called F*** That's Delicious.
I'm ready to eat one.
Actor Elliot Page went around the world exploring LGBT culture for gaycation, and feminist icon Gloria Steinem explored the lives of women all around the world for a show titled, you guessed it, Woman.
That's like the most basic title for a show. You gotta be kidding me. Like, even Vice is better than that. Really? I mean, well, Viceland was pretty good. Well, I never watched it, but I heard some positive things about it. Like, man, like they really teamed up with Disney for like fuck ton of money, like 200 million more, just so that way they can launch their own like TV show or not show, channel, because VBS was shut down. Like what was it, a couple years prior to this? So he's like, wow, like I guess they're now above MTV now. I don't know. That's that's kind of shocking. Like they really went from working together to then separating and then shutting down VBS to then Vice making their own channel, and I guess now they're popular, more popular than MTV. Because I haven't heard anything from MTV in a long time. So it's like I guess Vice won in the end.
While Viceland now goes by the name Vice TV.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Viceland to Vice TV, but I mean it's still the same thing, but it's like, man, they decided this is, I guess, when things became more corporate, like they decided to get rid of the Viceland brand, like, it's at least you understood what it is. To now it's like Vice TV. That's like basic, just like, well, the name of the show, Women.
It's still going strong, airing in the US, Canada, France, Australia, New Zealand, Benelux, and Israel. By the mid-2010s, Vice seemed on top of the world. It had hundreds of millions of dollars in investment, partnerships with mega corporations like Netflix and HBO, and content that its audience seemed to eat up. It seemed like there was nowhere else to go but up. We now know that failure was certainly a possibility, but what caused it? In retrospect, it wasn't a single thing that caused the company to fail, but a combination of market changes, internal issues, poor financial management, and some good old bad luck. Let's break it down.
Oh wait, now they had trouble with Disney?
Bad luck. Let's break it down.
Like basically one of their biggest backers. Like, what happened? Because I always try to figure out. Because I knew like, something bad happened between the two, but it's like I never knew what exactly happened. So I guess this guy's gonna explain it.
One of the first signs of trouble for Vice Media came in 2019 from none other than the Walt Disney Corporation. Keep in mind that up until now, Disney had been one of Vice's biggest backers. Not only did Disney have a 10% stake in Vice through A&E Networks, but after it bought over 21st Century Fox, it got another 6% stake, a 16% stake in Vice Media in total.
So I guess they owned a lot more and they poured in a lot more money compared to any other company. Because, Fox had 6%, Disney had 10%, but then Disney bought Fox, so now it's 16%.
This sizable stake in Vice cost Disney over $400 million that it was hoping to recoup.
Well, that's a bit more than that. Well, I guess technically it is. I don't know, because I thought they put in that much money in and then 200 million more, and because, they bought out Fox, maybe like a bit more, but I guess that's not really how it works.
This was not to be. Because in 2019, Disney essentially wrote off the investment and
Disney put more than $400 million into Vice Media. Now it's just that investment is worthless. Oh my god. Jesus Christ. It's like pouring all your money into like a dumpster fire. I guess that's what happened in Disney's eyes, because Vice just made none of that money back. But what did they do with that money? That's the thing.
Declared it worthless. Just a year before, the company wrote down the value of the investment to $157 million. Eventually, the company gave up on getting any of its money back. This is not the kind of news any investor wants to hear, but the truth is, cracks had started to form in Vice Media as a company a while before this.
Uh-oh.
The mid to late 2010s saw the rise of the Me Too movement.
Oh my fucking god. Well, here's the thing. There's nothing bad about, women exposing men for being bad, but it's like, especially nowadays where like there's a bunch of false allegations, like we saw what happened with George Not Found and some other creators, like their lives almost got ruined, but then oh yeah, not only just George Not Found, but also Johnny Depp, like that's like the biggest case out of them all. Like Amber Heard, like his ex-wife, just tried to defame him, but then I mean, then again though, when it came down to everything, like they were both equally bad. But it's like, my God, like Amber Heard was obviously not the victim, of course not, and so wasn't Johnny Depp. Like they're not like evil, they're not like victims or evil. Like they're equally, you know, they equally abused each other. Let's just say, because obviously, some things happened between the two, and that's what happened. And unfortunately, when it came to Johnny Depp, like he lost almost everything. Meanwhile, Amber Heard, like she gained, again, I think she gained a bit more, ever since that happened. But then, the whole lawsuit happened, and obviously now she's, now she's just, well, I think she's in Spain now. Like she's just irrelevant. Like no one wants to work with her no more, and I can't blame them. Because seriously, like she had to ruin Johnny Depp's life like that, and now she obviously got the consequences, she deserved. And George Now Found, I feel bad for him, but then again, though, he kind of decided to just be an idiot and just say, actually, you know what, my abuser was right. Like tickling her was kind of a sexual assault thing, and even Dream just decided to say the same thing. Like obviously, what George did was terrible. Like come on, guys. Like obviously the accuser was bad. Like Katie Bugs, like she deserved to be, you know, she deserved to just get all the shit that she got thrown at for, falsely accusing George Not Found. Like it's just obvious, but I guess because since their audience is just one of those people that wanted to listen to the victims more than the actual the the people that are being accused. Well, of course they're going to listen to the accuser more instead of actually listening to George and Dream. And well, I mean, Dream had nothing to do with. I mean, Dream had false accusations himself, but obviously we're talking about George Not Found in particular because seriously, because Dream, he's all cleared now, but when he came to like George, well, like I said, it was all good. Then he even had a good response, and then he was like, you know what? She's right. I did sexually assault her by just tickling her. Like, come on, guys, especially George. At least grow a spine and dick and balls, okay? Obviously, what you did was not sexual assault. But yeah, that's why I don't like the Me Too movement because man, it was good at first. I mean, I'm not a feminist or anything, but it's like it's all good. But then obviously, then false stories began to surface, and next year, there's like a whole, alpha male versus girl boss civil war. I guess you can say like now because of this whole like Me Too and just false accusations. Now there's like a whole gender war. I guess you can say now between both men and females.
With powerful men finally getting called out for their behavior towards women. These included execs from top companies in the media, and one of Vice's biggest scandals of that time had to do with its now former president, Andrew Crichton. In December 2017, the New York Times published a scathing report alleging that there had been 4 different settlements within Vice towards employees who had suffered harassment or defamation. And once this report went live, the floodgates were open. 20 other women came forward with their accounts of being harassed or witnessing misconduct taking place at Vice.
So what we know, at least from the New York Times, that we've got 4 settlements involving allegations of sexual harassment or defamation against Vice employees, including its current president. This is Andrew Crichton.
It was a disaster. A company that had been once the voice of culture was now being accused of running a toxic workplace. Its management bowed its head in shame, with Shane Smith and Sarush Alvi admitting that they had failed to provide a safe and inclusive work environment. Once the new year rolled in, it was time to clean house. The company confirmed that Crichton was taking a temporary leave while the allegations were investigated, and he eventually stepped down later that year. Vice also fired its chief digital officer, Mike Germano. Despite the damage control, some viewers began to see Vice in a new light, and it's debatable if it's been able to fully shake off the scandals.
Well, I never heard of any of those scandals, so it's like, well, it didn't really matter because, well, I'd never heard of it. I mean, yeah, I kind of feel bad for the women if the stories are true or not. First off, don't sue me, okay? I need to look into that in particular. Like, this guy didn't go too much into detail, so I'm not sure if this is like all true or not. But yeah, man, like this is kind of like why I don't like the Me Too movement. Like, it was good, but then it turned bad.
From the harassment scandal onwards, Vice entered a very tumultuous period. With Crichton out at Vice, more leadership changes were soon to come. Shane Smith, who had been at the helm of the company since its early days in Canada, announced that he was stepping down as CEO and was succeeded by former A&E Network CEO Nancy Dubik. Once Dubik came on, her priority was making Vice profitable again.
And also making it worse. Just gotta put that out there.
Digital revenue to new media companies had been disappointing, more on that in a bit, and she wanted to turn things around. Her approach was to trim Vice's workforce and to get even more funding. How much more funding? Only around $200 million. No biggie. Dubik ended up being successful on both counts. Vice got $250 million in investors in May 2019, and the next year, the company laid off 150 members of staff. The company also made a notable acquisition of Refinery 29, a website that's very popular with young women and could bring a new audience to Vice's content.
Or it just could fail, everything. Like, this will just make the company worse because here's the thing. I think Vice is like, predominantly like mostly male, like when it comes to the audience, but then, I mean, there's some females obviously, but then when they buy a website that's like predominantly mostly female, to think like, oh, men and female can like get together well, especially in this day and age. No, like obviously the male audience could be like, what the heck, like why are these women here? Like, what's the whole point of them here? Like, there's nothing important for them. And obviously the female are going to be like, why are these men here? Like, obviously these people are like radicalized. You know what I'm saying, chat? Like, these people are just radicalized into thinking like they're superior, I guess you can say, in some way. It's like obviously they're going to clash with each other, and next you know, the old audience is going to be like, screw this. Like, most of the male audience who didn't leave, and then some of the female audience will be like, yeah, like, this is not for us. Like, why did you guys buy us out? Like, buy out the thing we like. Like, these men, I guess you can say, like, they're gonna ruin what we like. So screw you guys. We're gonna leave too. So it's like, in the end, like, this is like a lose lose for Vice. Like, if they bought out Refinery 29, like, they're just gonna make their, not only their old audience mad, like, just make them leave, but also their new audience that they're trying to get that's mostly female. If that makes any sense. Like, I don't know why. Just in my opinion, that's what happens if you try to do something like that. If you try to get like a new audience that's like, more like, if you want more like a male audience or a more female audience, it just doesn't go well. Like, just stick to what your old audience wants, and also try to like change up and be more, just adapt more rather than just try to get a new audience entirely. Like, it would just not go well, and just the old and new audience would just clash with each other like numerous times.
The deal was reportedly worth around $400 million.
Yeah, that was not worth it in the end.
And brought Vice's valuation as a company to $4 billion. But this didn't mean they were out of the woods just yet. Far from it, in fact. To put Vice's issues into perspective, the reason why the company saw a decline in the late 2010s and is now filed for bankruptcy is due to two things. One, the company was spending way too much money. We've already touched on the Refinery 29 acquisition, but Vice was burning through its cash in other ways. One of these was its expansion in the mid-2010s. In 2014, Vice Media announced a joint venture with Rogers Communications that would see the development of production facilities in Canada at the cost of $100 million. This was the same year that Vice's headquarters moved to New York City. Once Vice was set up in New York, it took on over 500 new employees and doubled its office space, with its lease alone costing $20 million. And let's not forget about the global expansion. Vice is credited with having offices in 35 countries, and that is not cheap at all. The second thing you need to consider is that the 2010s were all about new media. Think of BuzzFeed and...
Oh god, no. Not BuzzFeed. No. Absolutely not. They suck. I'm glad they crashed and burned.
Heyday. New media companies were the movers and shakers of popular culture, and every big corporation wanted a piece of the pie. Thus, the hundreds of billions of dollars being pumped into companies like Vice. The idea was that these companies could recoup these costs through ad revenues. But things didn't exactly pan out that way. Sure, readers were flocking to sites like Vice and BuzzFeed in 2013, but as the years went on, people turned more towards social media sites.
And because, there were things that, well, mainstream media just didn't want to cover, then obviously advertisers are gonna be like, why would we want to put our ads in stuff that we don't like? So it's like how they're supposed to like recoup their costs when it comes to like advertising if well the advertisers just doesn't want to advertise on websites like Vice or Vox or BuzzFeed. Like it's something they don't want or just they don't like in general. Like what's the whole point? Like you guys do realize that that's not going to be like a good idea.
And where viewers go, so does ad revenue. In fact, Meta and Google account for the majority of ad revenue globally, leaving platforms like Vice with very little. So you have a company that was burning through its investment and not bringing in the heaps of money it had expected, and there was bound to be a disaster. And Vice wasn't alone. BuzzFeed, Vox Media, and others have also faced financial challenges in recent times because of this change in industry conditions. Remember when we said that Dubik came on board at Vice to try and turn around its profitability? Well, after 5 years in the role, she announced that she was leaving in February 2023 after the company had failed to turn around its fortunes. She would be replaced by Bruce Dixon and Josefa Lokhandwala, who would act as co-CEOs. Around that time, rumors surfaced that Vice would be laying off staff and even possibly filing for bankruptcy. That's not good at all. The rumors ended up being true, and in April 2023, Vice announced that it would cancel its iconic Vice News Tonight show and would lay off dozens of employees. Barely a week after the layoffs were confirmed, the New York Times reported that Vice Media would be filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy and was looking to sell itself. 2 weeks later, Vice Media indeed filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and publicly available documents gave a glimpse into the media empire's troubles. In August of that year, Vice was bought by Fortress Investment Group and Soros Fund Management for $350 million. This was a mere fraction of the $5.7 billion it was once valued at, which shows just how bad things have gotten at Vice. The company listed assets between $500 million and $1 billion. It also listed a number of debts, including $474.6 million owed to the Fortress Investment Group. And like so many things that Vice was involved in, it was controversial. One of its former reporters, Joseph Cox, took to Twitter X to reveal that while many of its staff were struggling with the layoffs, the company was paying huge bonuses to its executives. Its global TV president, Morgan Hertzon, got a $150,000 bonus. Its co-CEO, Hazifa Lokhandwala, got over $133,000. And its global head of programming, Subrata D, got a bonus of more than $201,000. Keep in mind that Vice was still allegedly owing freelancers across the board. Yikes. Not a great way to start its new era.
Moving on. I don't know if they can really move on, not gonna lie.
After decades of being a force of new media, Vice is now facing one of its biggest challenges yet. Even with its new ownership, Vice still has to turn its fortunes around if it wants to exist in the next decade and beyond. And to be clear, this isn't a Vice problem, it's an industry one. Even if Vice curbs its spending, it still needs to bring in money to stay afloat. And honestly, that's a bit of an uphill battle. Media companies with Vice's business model have not been having an easy time adapting to changing consumer trends and capturing ad revenue. It doesn't really matter how good or engaging Vice's content is if it can't reasonably turn a profit. Mega corporations like Meta and Google have made it near impossible for other businesses to capture ad revenue. And so, Vice's biggest challenge is finding a new stream of income before it becomes a relic of the past. So, what are your thoughts on Vice's bankruptcy? Do you...
Well, I saw from a long time, they just started making bad decisions. I mean, if they wanted to, become a good thing now, just copy like rap or these, other news outlets you can say that are being popular on Twitter and Instagram. Not like rely on your website too much. Like, when it comes to like ads, clicks, and subscriptions, like just not really focus on the website or magazines. Like those things are obviously outdated. Just focus on social media in particular. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, just make more tweets and also Instagram posts. Like, obviously, there's the reason why like Rap TV or Drama Alert, all that stuff are all popular is because, well, they're covering not only just trendy things but also things that are easily accessible and they're doing it consistently. So if they do what they already did, like covering things that no one would cover on these platforms, then it would just be, extremely profitable and just could help bring Vice back. But I highly doubt they would do something like that. So I guess, Vice can just I don't know be put out of its misery and just I don't know shut down if they can't. I mean, they already got bought out from bankruptcy, but I don't know. I feel like that even though they came out of bankruptcy, I don't think they can really last any much longer. But anyways, that's about it for this video. Man, it's a good video. I'm just gonna like it. I'm not sure about subscribing though. I might watch a bit more from this guy to see if I can really subscribe. I mean, some other people I watched like Toastify, they got subs because well, I watched a bit of their content already. But hey, I'm not saying this guy's a bad guy. Like I think his documentary was good, but it's like I don't know. Maybe I'll watch a bit more content from his, and I can subscribe.